Hey everybody, it's Witch here with another video back at ya. Today we're going to be doing some pretty cool custom nether portal design, something you might have seen before, but if you stick around you'll find out some pretty cool new custom trees you can try out, some pretty simple tactics, and some great organic building. Please, if you like the video and you want to see more time lapses and building tutorials from me, make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, and hit the bell notification. Let's go! So the first thing we're going to do is clear out all of these trees. We're going to clear out this island and kind of make a really cool, unique spot for ourselves. I think one of the big things I want to try with this build in particular is incorporate a lot of the natural environment. So with 1.19 generation, like, we don't have to terraform every single thing again, which is a nice change. So it's super important that, to me at least, that we kind of work with what the world gives us. It makes it a lot less work for me, and it's a neat little challenge. So first thing I'm doing is deciding my block palette. It's really good to establish your gradients and what kind of color schemes you want to go with before you really delve into a build. I basically my least favorite block in Minecraft is grass. Ugh, ugly grass. You can see it kind of makes like green lines on cliff sides, and I don't think it's the best texture. I also am very particular about making sure that my trees, my gardens, all of that stands out really well, and grass makes it so that none of it stands out because everything becomes green, and that's just not how the real world is. Like, if you look at a forest, or if you go out camping, most of the time you're on dirt and pine needles and fallen leaves, and I think there's a lot of beauty in that. It really shows off the beauty of the trees and the beauty of the plants. So since this is such a nature themed build and it's all about the garden that we're creating here, I really want to show off what we have. So first thing I'm doing is just removing all of the grass from the island, and we're replacing it with a mixture of blocks. I really love to use soul soil as like a wet, muddy dirt. I think it just looks perfect. It looks great as like fertilizer and garden, and it looks great at the edge of dirt islands. Size of our nether portal, since that's going to be really the main focus of this build, is hey, we have a nether portal here. This is going to be our spawn area. This is where people come into the world. This is where people come into that area. Next, I like to establish the pathing in a build. You know, where do I want this to go? Where am I going to build sight lines around? It's just super important to understand where exactly you are sourcing your build from. And I like to use a lot of textures and gradients in my build. I could spend hours texturizing one thing. So we're just adding a little bit of moss to add some of that green back in. And now we're going in with the trees around the nether portal. This is the main focus. So it's super important to get this right. However, I think I always find organics building to be a lot easier. Organics building in Minecraft is basically building shapes that are organic to our worlds and are inorganic to Minecraft because it's a block game. And these trees are super simple to build if you get the hang of it. It's made with a technique called blobbing, where you just place block after block without putting too much thought into it, and then you go back in and carve it out, kind of like sculpting something with clay, or letting like paintbrushes, like watercolor paintbrushes, kind of paint themselves. You know, you just want to kind of let the blocks build themselves and kind of go with the game, and then see where you end up and edit it from there. It's kind of harder to explain, easier to do. So if you ever want to try building organic shapes, just get in there with some dirt, some random blocks, and just kind of start going at the shape until you get what you want. I love to texturize these trees. I went with a stripped oak. So it's important to get some other textures in there. So I added some oak planks and a few notches in the tree in the shape of apiaries, bee apiaries. I think that they are all the same color, and they add a nice little variety of texture to it. I'm mostly going in with, I believe it was azalea leaves? No, it was I forget the base leaf. probably just an oak leaf. But I added it with some flowering azaleas just to have kind of a blooming effect. And then one of my favorite things to do is dot non-leaf blocks inside of leaves. I think they add a lot of variety and color. One of my favorites is slime blocks. However, this time I'm using melons, which is another one of my favorites. And I find a very cool trick later on of putting azalea flowers underneath melon blocks. And it kind of looks like this flowering fruit of magic and mysticism. Another classic thing that you'll see a lot is the lanterns hanging off of chains from the trees. I think they add a really cool mystical effect. So I was experimenting with that, deciding where I want to go with it. And I think we're definitely going the mystical route here with this nether portal. Now, I think I see a lot of people build leaves on trees by just kind of hugging the branch with leaves. But I really like to make sure it's bushy because realistically in real life, when you look at these trees, you see the big branches and then there's tons and tons of little branches coming off of those big ones. So just because you don't build the physical branch doesn't mean that there isn't branches there with leaves on it. So feel free to always like fan out and bushel effect all of your leafage. Oh, great camera work. Ooh, we're going through the nether portal. So excited. What are we gonna get? Is it gonna be another fortress spawn? Wasteland. Basalt Delta. Oh, we didn't go through. Okay. This is such a good view. Wow. Camera man witch. I cannot believe. But it's super cool to make sure that you add plenty of leafage, and it's hard to see with this view. I wish I had gone back in, but this section that I'm building on right here has no branches attached. It doesn't mean that it doesn't make sense, right? It's just smaller amounts of branches, and I felt that it needed an extra bushel further out to kind of make a better shape. If you look at a lot of deciduous trees, they kind of make a triangular shape, so you want to make sure you kind of give the highest point of the tree, the widest point of the tree, kind of making a pyramid on top of your branches. I think the lanterns add a lot of variety. I wanted to kind of frame the path a little bit more because I felt like it needed some more, so I added some walls in there with lanterns on top, so we had some lighting. And then I wanted to add something unique to the area, so I ended up going with a mushroom circle. Experimented with a few different designs of mushrooms and ultimately decided these like medium smaller sized ones with the actual mushrooms dotted around. But it adds kind of a nice variety right when you come out of the portal. You see this mushroom circle, you see the path. There's kind of two ways to go as opposed to just one, which is always helpful. I always say with like city design, right? If you walk down your street in your city, there's probably 4 different streets you could take, up to 100 different streets you could take to get to your destination, right? But you always choose the easiest one. But there are options, right? You could always take another path to get to the building you want, to get to the store, and that's just good city design. You want to have options. So it's great to have multiple sightlines, multiple options, places for people to explore, to get lost. So this is kind of a small scale version as we're just on this little island, but you'll see more in the future city that I'm building in this world. You'll see a lot more pathways that kind of, twist and wind. It's good to get a lot in there. I decided to go with another type of tree on the island. I felt like that tree around the nether portal was super particular and specific, and it needed to kind of be a focus. So the other trees on the island are going to be a little bit smaller and have different varieties. I decided to go with like a skinnier tree, maybe like Japanese cypress. They're I think mangrove as the base, and then maybe azalea as the leaves, I don't remember, but they're pretty cool. I think they add some good height variety, and they give a good basis for what I want like the tallest trees on the island to be, so I'm going to kind of base the rest of everything around that. Next, I wanted to connect an island up to the future civilization that we're going to be building. So the path has to go somewhere, right? So I'm building a small bridge, just a really simple bridge design. I really wanted to try out those new reinforced deep slate blocks, but you're about to see, ultimately, I decided against it. I'm starting to play with the diorite. I just feel like the black and white offer a lot more contrast, a lot more interest, and the deep slate blocks were looking too similar. And if I replaced them, then the pattern looked off if I added texture to them. So it was just easier to add variety of white in there to try to get some contrast and color blockage. And then I started experimenting with replacing them and ended up replacing the whole side of the bridge with white blocks. But I think it offers a lot more contrast and color blocking, like I said, for the pathway to be darker colored and then the walls to be wider. And I do add some more gray in there. You see I'm adding anvils to kind of add variety, and great camera work. Once again, camera witch. One of a kind. You can see I'm starting, well, you can sort of see. I'm starting to put some andesite and some smooth stone slabs to add some color in there. And then I'm using world edit functions to copy and paste it. There's no point in building repetitive patterns, right? As long as you have the option available to you. Obviously, with like in survival, things are different. You get a pattern, it's easier to copy over, and then you can kind of figure out how many blocks you need with patterns and things like that. So texturing is a little bit harder in survival. One recommendation I have is to just get, again, build a palette ahead of time and build palettes so you know your textures, you know your gradients before even going in, and then just having an even amount of each block and going through them. Another hot tip for survival when it comes to organics, earlier I was talking about the blobbing technique. You might have heard some other popular YouTubers talk about it when building in survival. They'll use dirt as their building block because it's easy to put up, it's easy to take down. If you have a good shovel, it's really easy to take down quickly and replace quickly, and it's just a much easier block to build scaffolding out of and create those unique shapes, those organic shapes with dirt. And then I ultimately decide that we're continuing with this very naturey theme, so I want the bridge to look overgrown. So I replace a lot of blocks with moss on the side, and on the pathway I add moss carpet. It just adds another level of contrast and variety, and it just makes it look a lot more cool. I think the green really pairs well with the white and black. And because I have ADD and can't finish one thing at a time, I'm going back to the island to build more of those taller cypress trees. I'm just going to dot a few more around, and then we're going to start playing with other types of trees. I think it's super important when building forest type environments, garden type environments, you never have the same tree 100 times and none other trees. Like, you've never walked into a forest and it's all one tree. Like, of course there are areas like that exist, but it's pretty uncommon. So you can see I'm experimenting with other types of trees here. I want something a little bit smaller, a little bit wider to add variety. I ultimately decide against going with any type of wall and pick a darker wood. I think I choose muddy rooted blocks. I forget what they're called, but they look great. And those are azalea leaves on top of that. It was jungle on the cypress trees. It was jungle leaves because there's little fruits in them. Little fruits. So because I'm using the azalea leaves, I felt like it was really easy to add moss to it, and then I wanted them to have kind of a mangrove-y effect where there are leaves hanging down. So I added the glowberries so that they had light emitting and the more weeping textures. But I think it adds a lot of variety. And here's what I'm talking about with like sight lines and stuff. It's important to kind of frame your pictures, right? You don't want the picture to be the whole thing. You want framing, you want somewhere for the eyes to be going to. So I'm going to keep the pathways super clear, and I'm going to use the trees and the other types of plants I plant to frame the pathways and the sight lines around the pathways. So I decided I'm still building a lot of those trees. You can see in the corner here, I decided on going with a bamboo with flowering azalea on top. I thought it added, I'm not really sure if it's supposed to be a particular kind of plant, but it adds like a unique tall skinny stem with like flowers. I just thought it really helped with framing and filling space. Bamboo is such a cool block that they added. You could really do a lot of things with bamboo. So it's just super important to make sure that everything looks full on the island. When you're building gardens and stuff, right, you don't want a lot of dead space or empty space. It's all about where the eye is looking, what details can you add, what can you use to fill the data air with. And it takes a lot of time and practice to kind of sit there, go through blocks, decide what you can use to fill space, decide what kind of blocks would add contrast, what kind of blocks would help with the palette. I went with a lighter color log for the oak tree, and then everything, all the other trees on this build are going to be darker toned, and that really makes the whole island pull focus to the lighter color, right? You're always going to be pulling frames to the lighter color. So looking from the portal, your eyes are going to be focused to the lighter color of the white bridge, as opposed to if you're coming off the bridge, your eyes are going to be pulled towards the lighter color of the oak tree. So always keep in mind that, like, if you are adding one color of something, if everything is lighter and there's a little bit of dark, your eyes are going to pull focus to that dark as well. So it works both ways. So when you are deciding your palette and deciding what you want to go with, pick what you want to be the focal point, have that be a lighter color, have that pull the attention, and the rest can be darker tones, muted tones, tones that help each other, and the contrast is where you want the focus to be at. So this is kind of a micro scale of things. I love to do micro and detail. I can spend hours doing a little bit of detail. You see I'm even adding a smaller tree with just fence posts and mangrove leaves. It's super fun, I think, to kind of think of all the little things that can fill space. Sugarcane would grow around the water. This group of trees here, this group of trees here. I add a little wheat field eventually in the middle. It just is fun to be like creating focal points and also background noise, right? There's a lot of green here. This is a big reason why I got rid of the grass, because at this point in the build, if you're looking at it, there's a ton of green here with all of the trees and all of the plants, but if the ground was also green, then it would just be one giant blob of green. By swapping out all of the grass with this dirt mixture, we now have contrast, we now have focus pulls and sight lines and color blocking, and it blends out. From the green just stands out so much more. Everything blends out from path. You see the path clearly, and then you have the dirt, and the green blends out into the tops of the trees, and it pulls your eyes up and draws attention up, as opposed to everything being green, and then you don't really have anywhere to look because everywhere's the same. I don't like grass. And now I'm just filling space with some bushes. Like I said, super important to fill space. Decide what colors you want. Decide what gradients you want. Decide what plants you want. There's that little wheat field that I add. I think it's a nice little meadow in an opening. I decided to not put any trees there. I felt like there was enough in that space. Felt like it needed some sunlight, so I'm adding little meadows of farming plants in those spotlights, because farming plants generally take more sunlight anyways. This has been a fun build. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and please, if you want more tips and tutorials on Minecraft building, on organics, on custom trees, on custom plants, stick around, subscribe, hang out. I have some really cool stuff planned for this area. Next video, I think we're gonna make giant statues. We'll see what I'm in the mood for. I might end up starting the city, but stick around and find out. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, comment down below, and hit the bell notification. Thank you so much.